Just another day of Auburn football news, hot off the presses. We've got Kyle Loomis on the line from E2C Network. You can catch his work and the rest of the staff there right here on YouTube talking Auburn athletics. Kyle, how you doing today?
Doing just fine. Just living the world that is the roller coaster of being an Auburn football fan. That's what I'm doing right now.
And to bring everyone up to date, as we record this, it just came out here in the last hour that offensive coordinator Austin Davis, who has yet to call a game and really work with the team going into the 22 season, coming in from the Seattle Seahawks, has met with Brian Harsin on Monday here, and he is stepping away.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. I started getting privy to this news probably about the same time it started circulating on social media, and I have, everybody's got their sources that you go and confirm things with, and I have one person in particular that I check with on all these things, and he said, yeah, this isn't looking good. Stepping away, before, like you said, before even calling a snap, much less doing very much recruiting. I think the rumors are that he got into the recruiting world and realized it was a little bit more than he wanted to be a part of. I'm not surprised by that. We all know that NFL and college football are two very different games in the way they operate, the way the lifestyle. So that's the rumors. You're hearing things like personal issues or family issues or things like that are always thrown around. I don't know that we personally will ever know exactly what the reason was for the departure, but it is yet another cog in the wheel that is Auburn football's off season that just continues to turn. And they're struggling to find a bit of a foundation to land on because, year one under Harsin was just about the transition. What you get is what you get. We were hoping we would start laying this foundation in this offseason. It's kind of hard to do that when you continue to turn over. And I'm not a doom and gloom type of person either, but it is starting to get a little bit worrisome to see this continually happen over and over again in the offseason.
Yeah. Kyle, it's got to be a little unsettling to the Auburn fan base, you included, as somebody who's part of the fan base, but also analyzes the sport and the game and is a part of the media to a certain extent. So Derek Mason, that was the huge news before an hour ago. And even though it's kind of old news, to have a prominent defensive coordinator, of course, most recently Vanderbilt head coach, but really cut his teeth and showed his value at Stanford as a defensive coordinator, comes to Auburn to take care of the defense. Well, one season in, and then he leaves for a post that you would think on the surface is at best a lateral move to Oklahoma State.
Yeah, I would agree that it's a lateral move.
At best.
I would think that the decision for him was just, and this is stuff that I've been told and hearing and kind of being corroborated by other people in the media, that there was just a difference in philosophy between him and Harsin. And look, I think everybody could look at the writing on the wall and see that Derek Mason wasn't going to be a long-term solution for Auburn because he probably wants to get back in the head coaching game at some point. I don't fault him for his time at Vanderbilt. No offense to our Vanderbilt fans out there, but it's Vanderbilt. And, it's hard to really fault anybody for their time at Vanderbilt. So I do think that he wants to be a head coach again. So I was expecting 1, maybe 2 seasons out of him, probably just 2. But to see it happen this season during this time is kind of a little bit surprising. He was the exciting hire for Coach Brian Harsin. In fact, I think Auburn fans might have rioted if they hadn't gone and got him. But then as the season started to turn, you saw there were some questions, some rumblings. Did we make a mistake here? And I thought that was a little bit rash at the time because the entirety of that first season, everybody I thought needed to just take a deep breath and realize that this is a transition year, different philosophy schemes, all that kind of stuff. And we're switched from a 4-3 base to a 3-4 base. That in and of itself is just going to wreak havoc with the people that you've already brought in recruiting wise. To play for the 4-3 as opposed to the 3-4. So I'm sad to see Derek Mason go. It doesn't make sense to me why you would go to Oklahoma State. I've been told that he has NFL aspirations. I thought he might take a positional coach in the NFL somewhere. Maybe that wasn't available to him right now. So unfortunately, I think Oklahoma State's just another stopover point for him.
We got Kyle Loomis on the line. You can catch his work and the rest of the crew there at E2C Network right here on YouTube. And it's a complete look at Auburn athletics, correct?
Yes, it is. And we go beyond athletics too. It's the way I like to describe it is if it's orange and blue, it's what we do. It always comes back to, sports, and it always comes back to mainly football, basketball, and even baseball, those big three sports in college athletics. But we're going to try and do a little bit of everything. We have podcasts that go along with that where we talk about track and field and equestrian. We've interviewed people about children's books that they wrote that have Auburn sports ties back to it that weren't even about sports. So it is always about sports. It will always get back to it, but the easy way to just say it, if it's orange and blue, it's what we do.
Very cool. Folks, please like the video, share these videos out on social media. Not everyone knows that we're here talking college football with you each and every day, and subscribe right here to the Voice of College Football. So, Kyle, the overriding picture this offseason, when you've got 5 assistants leave and I believe 1 dismissed, the other 4 left, that it's not a good look, as it's just people wondering what's going on there when assistants are leaving before they even really coach, and even just being in the door for 1 season, obviously not having that equity in the program yet, Brian Harsin, and the credibility that comes with being somewhere and succeeding for a time period where there's trust built. It's just not a good look.
Oh, it's not. It's definitely not a good look. But I try to stress this on my channel. We only operate with 25% of the information. They have they have 100% of the information. So there's 75% we're not privy to what's going on behind the scenes. And everybody's, like I said, got sources, and we all hear the same rumors and things like that. So it's easy just to react to that and not look at stuff within the context of the situation. Is the sky falling at Auburn? No. Is it good and stable right now? No, either. They both can be the truth there. I will admit that 5 coaches leaving in the first year, not a good look. 1 dismissed in Cornelius Williams, one that at the time I was shocked by, honestly. Like, I remember where I was, what I was doing when that news dropped, and having to react to that and try to get some content out for it. Now in hindsight, that wide receiver coach, Cornelius Williams, that we fired, it looked like the right decision, unfortunately. And I loved the hire personally. I thought he was going to be a great recruiting asset because of his ties up and down Alabama. He's been at basically every school, north, middle, south, every part of Alabama. I thought that was going to be kind of the point that we needed to kind of reestablish ourselves recruiting within the state of Alabama again. And what we have to compete against. You go to Derek Mason, we've talked about a little bit. The Mike Bobo situation, it never seemed like a marriage that was going to last, at least from the Auburn fans' eyes. I was willing to give him a little bit more time, but there wasn't much fruit for the labor that we were going through with Mike Bobo at the time. You count in that Bo Nix leaving, that kind of adds to that. The offensive line struggles. I still believe that any offensive coordinator, any quarterback would have struggled this year with Auburn's offense, no matter how good they were. And then you obviously add in several others. People forget that Tracy Rocker left, before even barely the ink was dry on him. I mean, I think that was even shorter amount of time from Austin Davis, the defensive line coach. He kind of has been at Auburn once. It was surprising that he'd come back. And this Austin Davis stuff, I think it's obviously the reactionary thing is, the sky is falling. This is the last one or the next one to go. But at the same time, most people are assuming, and I think it's pretty much common knowledge, that Brian Harsin was going to be calling plays. This is just the quarterback coach. And I don't mean that. He is the offensive coordinator in title and was probably going to give him those reins. But I don't necessarily think this loss outside of recruiting is going to really affect us all that much as of this moment. I could be wrong, but that's kind of just my initial feelings with this stuff just now breaking.
And Kyle, speaking of recruiting, there's not much to talk about in the moment, right. As we discussed before we started to record. Of course, the December 15th National Signing Day has taken over the recruiting cycle. 90% of the players are signed there. I do find that those programs that had a coaching transition, which Auburn does not, have a little bit more work to do, typically going into February. So a little bit of good and not so good there as well. If you look at it within context, lots expected of anybody in the SEC to try to keep up with Alabama and now what Texas A&M's doing. So seventh right now in the 247 Sports Composite, according to in the SEC rankings, 18th in the country. Again, for most programs across the country, hey, that would be an excellent recruiting class. For Auburn, maybe finding themselves in the most difficult position to be in based on who else plays football in that state. Just your thoughts about Brian Harson's recruiting efforts.
I thought he had an outstanding December with the early signing period. There was a lot of hype, a lot of momentum. Auburn was in play for a lot of recruits that they didn't even get. And that, I think, is a testament even of itself under year one. And at the time, it wasn't very tumultuous with changing out and things like that. Mike Bobo was the one that, but I think most people kind of had expected that. So that was very exciting, but it's kind of cooled off since then as we get to what, traditionally has been the main national signing day. There hasn't been a lot out that we're all privy to. Everybody's hearing and seeing these official visits, and that's been happening a lot this weekend. One of the great things for Auburn is their basketball program right now is just a great recruiting tool because, they bring the football players to that all the time. So if you want to have something good to think about this part of the signing period, they've at least had basketball doing really well to pitch to come. You come here, you can be part of this kind of atmosphere and go to these type of games while you're a football player here. The main things for recruiting is offensive line. My question to myself and other Auburn fans is, why are we assuming that the solution already isn't on campus, meaning that the ones that we already have? And so just because you're not seeing the offensive line coming in doesn't mean it's not being addressed. The coaches, again, have 100% of the information. We have 25%. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that we don't need some help because we do. I'm just willing to give them some time, assume that they have it under control, and maybe they've got a few surprises in store for us on National Signing Day that we're not privy to. And, he surprised us on early signing period, so I'm willing to give them that chance.
So, Kyle, if I read into that correctly, the offensive line has been the one unit on either side of the ball that's been disappointing, a consistent disappointment for probably 3 to 4 years.
Yes.
And people aren't necessarily satisfied with what they're seeing in terms of personnel being addressed through the transfer portal or through the players that have been signed in the 22 class to date.
Yes, there is not. I would say satisfaction is a nice way of putting it. Unhappiness is a better way of probably putting it, and we could go further than that. The offensive line, and I hate discussing, or not discussing, but just speaking about individual players in non-constructive criticism manners, and so I try very hard to do that. But you're speaking about a unit here. No other unit across the football team has to be more in sync with each other and has to be producing as a unit as opposed to an individual. You have to take care of your individual responsibilities, yes, but you have to be working together more than any other unit, I would argue.
Yep.
And that's been the thing that's plagued Auburn. We had, in my opinion, one of the best quarterbacks in college football, and I know that's a hot take, in Bo Nix, and we got him hurt. And I don't care if you're Spencer Rattler. I don't care if you're Caleb Williams. I don't care if Tom Brady comes back. If you can't block for him, it doesn't matter how good your quarterback is. And so we've got to figure out what the issue is. Is it the dynamic of who's playing together on that line, who the starters are the different units, or is it really we just need a fresh start? Auburn is returning two, I believe, if I have that number correctly, of their ones from last, Nick Brahms and Austin Troxell. I think those are probably two ones to carry over if you are looking for a restart on offensive line. So I am happy to have them returning here. And I'm always sad to see other players leave. And we've had some offensive linemen that were starting this year or backups decide to move off. But I think it is time for a restart there. And football is a game of inches. If you can't win that inch, you're not going to win the football game, much less a championship.
Staying on the offensive side, there was a wide receiver class at Auburn, I would say 2 to 3 years ago, that was much heralded. the production was decent last year, but again, it all ties together. If the quarterback can't get the ball to the wide receivers, then they're the most dependent players on the field. They need everything else to work to get the ball in their hands. And then if the quarterback's on his backside, then he can't operate effectively either. So, your thoughts about the wide receiver position and how it sets up going into spring practice?
I think I've already I said that early, just hinting at it. Who's going to be the guy? Cedric Jackson, Bo Jackson's nephew, is there. He would be probably our most consistent, and he's been inconsistent at times. But he's also one of my favorite players. I love players with a good story, and obviously, how much better can your story be if you're the nephew of Bo Jackson? But he's also had some shining moments. If it's not for him and TJ Finley and Georgia State, Auburn's football schedule is looking much worse. So I would say that he is coming back and staying for this extra year is going to be another kind of like we were talking about offensive line, helps you get over the hump to the next cycle. But really, Auburn needs someone within this recruiting cycle that they just picked up to step up. You know, there's a lot of people that like the 3-star Jay Fair. I think as a speed guy, I think what Auburn did was they kind of went out and got 3 different types of wide receivers, a kind of a taller one, a speed guy, and then kind of your all-around wide receiver, giving them several different options. Gone are the days of Seth Williams, Anthony Schwartz, Elijah Stove. We could have really used them this past year, but you can't fault a guy like Anthony Schwartz for going to the draft and getting drafted as high as he did. I think Seth Williams, had he chose to stay this year, he would have benefited. Auburn would have benefited. Elijah Stove, he was basically like 50 years old. He had been around forever. So I don't fault him for wanting to go off and try something else. But wide receiver is another area. As much as we, lament and talk about the offensive line play, when they do get the job done, your wide receivers have to catch the ball. And they were dropping balls. They were misaligned. That's the biggest thing for me, is how many times I watched before the Cornelius Williams firing, how often our wide receivers were offsides lining up. That's step number 1. That can't happen. And so that's why that fire in hindsight makes sense to me. So as you can tell, I've jumped around a lot on the wide receiver topic there. There's a lot of convoluted issues to be addressed, and hopefully it's something, the main takeaway would be someone needs to step up, whether it's Cedric Jackson this year or it's one of these new ones coming in and say, I'm the guy, send your attention to me, defenses. And then it opens up for everybody else.
Jackson caught 40 last year and a touchdown reception as well. Kobe Hudson, 44 catches, 4 touchdowns as well. Got Kyle Loomis on the line, E2C Network right here on YouTube for all your Auburn needs across the board. And we'll hit a position as well that is a bit shaky, but has a proud history, and that's in the secondary.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the secondary has definitely become one of Auburn's shining things in the last couple of years. And the oddest thing about this, just taking a few steps back to Coach Malzahn, if you had asked me, would Auburn become DBU, or at least have a case for that during Coach Malzahn's time, I would have laughed at you. But ironically, that's what he did. I mean, he shocked the world, put Noah Igbenogany in the first round. I believe Roger McCreary should go in the first round and will go in the first round, if not very high in it. And there's been several cases of even ones that weren't drafted are now on defensive rosters on NFL teams. You look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they've got 2 right now in Carlton Davis and Javaris Davis, I believe. The defensive backs history at Auburn as of late has been very, very good. And you can give a lot of that to Kevin Steele, the former defensive coordinator, which is why I think a lot of people were excited about having Derek Mason, because he's a defensive back guy. You would expect him to, just be salivating at what he had to work with at Auburn. With you losing Roger McCreary this year, it really begs another similar question as the wide receiver. Who's going to be the guy to step up for Auburn this year and be the lockdown corner or a lockdown safety? You've got several players that could do that. Jalen Simpson's one of those. He's a bit young, has made a few mistakes, but he's shown a lot of promise and talent if he can stay healthy. And then they have picked up a pretty good defensive back recruiting class in the early signing period. So while it is a little rocky and it was susceptible to getting beat a lot this year, we all remember the Mississippi State game. I was there. That was unfortunate, and that was very painful to watch. It has a lot of promise. So it's not one of these situations like offensive line where you're just kind of throwing your hands up and like, we got to figure something out. there's a route to success with defensive backs, and I like still where we're sitting at, despite it being a bit of a disappointment last year.
Kyle, the quarterback position. So Zach Calzada comes in. We talked about Bo Nix, and you touted him pretty highly. He's got this reputation as being an erratic player. I think they're a bit of an enigma. You know, good Bo, bad Bo became a bit of a slogan. I'm sure that you're more familiar with than I am, even. So he's off to Oregon, and we know that on occasion he could just be dynamic beyond belief in terms of what he could create. And I certainly thought that he developed as a passer and decision maker during his time at Auburn. So regardless, he's off to Oregon. Zach Calzada, that everyone should be familiar with, coming in from Texas A&M. And it's interesting to see that the quarterback influx just within the SEC Western Division. Is this basically going to be his job, or do you expect this to be a pretty wide open competition?
The way I've expressed to it on my channel and with our viewers there is this, and I made a video and plan to make some updates to this video throughout the off season. So we kind of started with what do we know now and what we should anticipate at this point. And then I will probably reassess that after A-Day, spring practice, and then probably as we get into the heat, literally here in the South, of fall practice, and start talking then. We'll have some real concrete stuff. As of this point, you know, I'm willing to still give TJ Finley the chance because he has a leg up in terms of being here, knowing the system, even though the system is now changing as of this stream with Austin Davis leaving. He does have a familiarity, obviously, with his head coach being with him for a year, so you can't really discount that from him. Did I see enough from him this year to make me think he's the guy? Not necessarily, but he also didn't have as ample of an opportunity. And when he was given an opportunity, it was pretty much in the worst possible scenarios. And he made magic one time with the Georgia State game, but not really in any other circumstances. Zach Calzada comes in as experienced, and he's got one thing on his resume that no other quarterback at Auburn has right now, and that's a win over Alabama. And you know how important that is to us. Now, you can't make decisions on who starts based on that, but you got to respect a guy who does that, has that to his resume, and played hurt during the game. I think people forget that he came back after getting hurt in that game and beat the mighty Alabama Crimson Tide. Granted, it was at home, but still an impressive showing. I remember watching that. Is it his job to win? You know, I think that's the easy way to go. And it wouldn't shock me in the least if that's the way the trajectory results, with him being the starter when we get to fall. But I'm still willing to put him and TJ Finley on even playing field at the moment. And that will probably change rapidly, whatever way that goes. You know, you've also got Robbie Ashford, who came in. I don't think most people are expecting him to win the starting job, but he definitely is a very solid backup. There's one thing I'm not worried about, is the availability of talent at quarterback for Auburn, which is kind of odd to talk about because it's been the Bo show for the entire time, and now we've got at least several serviceable options.
Absolutely. And you could consider that maybe a 1-for-1 trade. Robbie Ashford, a bit of a baseball player who's also a very athletic quarterback at Oregon, but untested coming in as well. Kyle Loomis, E2C Network, right here on YouTube for all your Auburn athletics and beyond athletics. Some great stories to tell there about the University of Auburn University, I should say. Kyle, we appreciate you stopping by. Thank you so much for the breakdown. Hope you have a great day.
Thank you so much for having me. Just sit back and hold on to the roller coaster ride that is Auburn football. We appreciate it, and War Eagle.